Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, March 24th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. 150 passengers and crew are presumed dead in the crash of a German passenger jet today in the southern French Alps. Officials say there are no likely survivors as search and rescue teams began to reach the remote area called Miolans-Reval near a popular ski resort. The Germanwings Airbus jet crashed as it traveled from Barcelona to Düsseldorf. Germanwings is a division of Lufthansa, Germany's largest airline. An occupation that has lasted for almost 50 years must end. That stern declaration came from White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough, who told the pro-Israel left-wing J Street convention in Washington that Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments disavowing a two-state solution cannot be ignored.
After the election, the Prime Minister said that he had not changed his position. But for many in Israel and in the international community, such contradictory comments call into question his commitment to a two-state solution, as did his suggestion that the construction of settlements has a strategic purpose of dividing Palestinian communities, and his claim that conditions in the larger Middle East must be more stable before a Palestinian state can be established. We cannot simply pretend that these comments were never made. America's commitment to a two-state solution is fundamental to U.S. foreign policy. It's been the goal of Republican and Democratic presidents, and it remains our goal today, because it is the only way to secure Israel's future as a Jewish and democratic state. We will look to the next Israeli government to match words with action and policies that demonstrate a genuine commitment to a two-state solution. And like every administration since President Johnson, we will continue to oppose settlement activity since it undermines the prospects of that peace. In the end, we know what a peace agreement should look like. The borders of Israel and an independent Palestine should be based on the 1967 lines with mutually agreed swaps. Each state needs secure and recognized borders, and there must be robust provisions that safeguard Israel's security. An occupation that has lasted for almost 50 years must end.
Turning to politics, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has apologized to the Arab community for his Election Day comments that generated charges of racism. Here with more is Eli Waglander.
Prime Minister Netanyahu offered a public apology last night to Israeli Arab citizens after a controversial comment made last Tuesday on Election Day sparked outrage. I know the things I said several days ago offended some of Israel's citizens, hurt the Arab citizens, Netanyahu said during a meeting with Arab local council heads and Likud-affiliated Arab dignitaries. I had no intention to hurt anyone, and I am sorry if I did. I see myself as the Prime Minister of each and every one of you, all the citizens of Israel, regardless of faith, ethnicity, or gender. Netanyahu had warned on Election Day, the Arabs are voting in droves, and if you do not go to the voting booth, Ahmed Tibi and Hanin Zoabi will make Bougie Herzog Prime Minister for the left. Netanyahu's remarks caused a firestorm in Israeli media, with many accusing the Prime Minister of using racism to win over voters. The United States was also displeased with Netanyahu's comments. The Joint Arab List responded last night, saying that it rejected Netanyahu's apology. Ayman Odeh, leader of the Arab List, said Netanyahu did not call the leadership of the Arab population and did not meet with them. He apologizes because there is international criticism, including criticism from the United States, Odeh said. And MK Ahmed Tibi dismissed Netanyahu's apology, saying it is an expression of regret and not a sincere apology. We expect from the Prime Minister to be responsible in both words and deed. When it comes to Jews, Netanyahu apologizes, but when it comes to Arabs, he is only sorry. Turning to coalition business, and Netanyahu met with Bayit Yehudi Chairman Naftali Bennett yesterday for the first time since last week's election. Officials said that the two did not discuss the assignment of ministerial portfolios, focusing instead on the character of the government being formed. The meeting was not officially seen as part of the coalition negotiations, which are expected to begin tomorrow. Bennett reportedly raised the possibility that the incoming government will advance Bayit Yehudi's proposed NGO transparency bill, which the party has set as a condition for joining the coalition. The revised bill now stipulates that any organization that seeks foreign funding and wants to receive a tax exemption would have to receive authorization from both the Finance Ministry and the Knesset's Finance Committee. Laura?
Thank you, Eli. It was necessary for Prime Minister Netanyahu to apologize to Israeli Arabs for his comments, and the issue should not be allowed to fester. At the same time, Arab politicians bear part of the blame for the volatile political climate. That was the view of two pundits who sounded off to IBA's Ari O'Sullivan on the matter.
Apology was absolutely necessary. I wish it hadn't taken him so long. Nevertheless, he did make the apology, and I think that that we should put this behind us as one more scandal in the daily roster of scandals in the state of Israel. Do Israeli Jews have reason to fear the loyalty not of Arab Israelis, but of the politicians who represent the community in the Knesset? Absolutely. When you have someone like Ahmad Tibi, who the night of the elections gave a speech saying, "We are the indigenous people of this land," meaning we and not you, what's the message to the Jewish majority?
It seems to me that the Prime Minister did the right thing, especially in view of the reality, which once again contradicts that which was expressed by President Obama. Arabs in Israel benefit from Israel's democracy. Arabs in Israel benefit from human rights, which no Arab benefits anywhere else in the Middle East. In fact, the turnout of Arabs in this last election was much higher than the last three previous elections in Israel.
Israel has denied White House allegations that it spied on closed-door meetings between the West and Iran, negotiating a deal to curb Tehran's nuclear capability, and attempted to undermine the U.S. administration's position. IBA Margot Dudkevich reports.
Washington has accused Jerusalem of spying on closed-door nuclear talks between the West and Iran in order to build up a case against any deal in the making. This according to a Wall Street Journal report based on current and former unnamed White House officials, former U.S. and Israeli diplomats, policymakers and intelligence officials. The report threatens to further damage ties between the U.S. and Israel amid the growing distrust between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Barack Obama. The spying allegedly began last year when the U.S. and other major powers entered talks with Iran in a bid to curtail its nuclear program. According to the report, Israel acquired the information from confidential briefings, informants and diplomatic contacts in Europe. The White House was not upset by the espionage, but more by the fact that Israel chose to share the information with U.S. lawmakers with the intent of influencing Congress members to block any deal. The spying operation was discovered after U.S. intelligence agencies spying on Israel intercepted communications between Israeli officials that carried details of the confidential talks. An official in the Prime Minister's office denied the allegations, calling them false, saying they're clearly intended to undermine the strong ties between Israel and the United States and the security and intelligence sharing between the two countries. It is one thing for the U.S. and Israel to spy on each other. It is another thing for Israel to steal U.S. secrets and play them back to U.S. legislators to undermine U.S. diplomacy, a senior American official told the newspaper. As the Iranian nuclear talks gain momentum and chances of a deal being struck loom closer, the report claims Netanyahu uses levers of political influence, calculating that lobbying the issue before Congress before a deal is struck would improve chances of killing the deal or reshaping it. Speaking at the left-leaning pro-Israeli annual J Street conference, the White House chief of staff reiterated the U.S. will do everything to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
The deal we are pursuing is both realistic and achievable. A scenario where Iran forgoes domestic enrichment capacity for all time would surely be ideal, but it's not grounded in reality. Not even our closest partners support denying Iran the ability to pursue peaceful nuclear energy forever, and Iran already knows how to enrich uranium. We can't turn back the clock on that.
The Wall Street Journal report surfaced just days before U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is set to resume talks in Lausanne, Switzerland, with his Iranian counterpart Mohammad Javad Zarif. The P5+1 countries, the US, Britain, France, Russia, China, Germany, with Iran, hope to conclude a framework by the end of the month. Visiting in Paris, France, Intelligence Minister Yuval Steinitz appeared to be somewhat pessimistic concerning the outcome of a deal, saying it appears quite probable that a bad, insufficient deal will happen. British Prime Minister David Cameron warned the alternatives to striking a deal with Iran are not attractive.
Obviously, we should not do a deal at any price, but I do think the alternatives to doing a deal are not alternatives that are attractive. And frankly, they're not attractive for Iran. The sanctions that we put in place, and Britain led the charge in Europe, has done such damage to Iran that it's in their interest to conclude a deal.
With barely a week to go before the March 31st deadline, only time will tell whether Netanyahu's fears of a bad deal were correct or Obama's optimism played through. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
Thousands of mourners took part in the heartbreaking funerals in Jerusalem yesterday evening for the 7 children killed in one of New York City's deadliest fires. The grieving father, Gabriel Sasson, gave an emotional eulogy for Yaakov, 5, Sarah, aged 6, Moshe, aged 8, Yeshua, 10, Rivka, 11, David, 12, and Elian, 16. He said, God took 7 roses. Why 7? 1 is not enough. 7 roses so beautiful and pure. There are not children like them. They were so pure. 15-year-old Sipora and his wife, Gail, aged 45, survived the blaze but remain in critical condition. The New York Fire Department blamed the fire on a malfunctioning hot plate used to warm food on the Sabbath. According to the Jewish Forward newspaper, this was New York's 4th deadly fire in 15 years that resulted from hot plates or Shabbat candles. Has a post-World War II Nazi refuge been discovered in Argentina? That's the question following archaeologists' claim that ruins he discovered could have been constructed as a safe haven for Nazis fleeing Germany. The site is located deep in Argentina's lush northern jungle. Researchers from the University of Buenos Aires investigated the site, where jungle legend says was once the home of Adolf Hitler's private secretary, Martin Bormann. What's the evidence? So far, only German coins and a porcelain plate made in Germany in the early 1940s. Archaeologist Daniel Shavelson said that the remote border location made it an ideal refuge for eluding authorities. He speculates that the site was likely prepared for, but not actually used by the Nazi hierarchy. Leading Nazis Adolf Eichmann and Joseph Mengele were among the large number of fugitive Nazis who were harbored by Argentina after the war. An alternative theory is that the buildings date back to the 17th and 18th century and were built and used by Jesuit missionaries. How can you combine coexistence between Israeli and Palestinian kids with love for animals? IBA's Alexandra Jen finds out.
Palestinian and Israeli schoolgirls grouped together for a good cause over the past weekend. Coexistence between people and animals, and people and other people. The event, titled New Spring, New Hope, brought together the Perez Center for Peace and the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in Israel. In Tel Aviv, elementary schoolgirls from Jericho and Beit Shemesh excitedly huddled around the horses and dogs and cats to get their chance to make a connection with the animals. But before the estimated 40 girls earned their opportunity to pet the animals, they listened to a lecture in both Hebrew and Arabic on the importance of treating the animals with respect.
The girls understand that their job today as volunteers is to give the animals love, affection, and warmth, and to prove them that they are also nice people who treat animals in a respectful manner.
Respect is the key word here. The event not only exemplifies respect and coexistence, but also the importance of education. It demonstrates that change is possible and that it does indeed begin with education. The schoolgirls were encouraged to touch, feed, and talk to the horses, dogs, and cats. Through an applied, hands-on activity, the students learned an invaluable lesson about overcoming differences and the most important concept of the event.
If Palestinian and Israeli children can live together, despite the differences, animals also have the right to live among us in peace, in harmony, in coexistence, despite the fact that they are so different from us.
Demonstrating this idea through work with animals who were once victims seems to have made the point with the girls. Here, a young Palestinian student, 11-year-old Raneen Ghanem, says, "We came to see the animals. The animals are so beautiful. We saw them together." And as the event came to a finish, the girls enjoyed a cake with the word peace written on it. Together. Alexandra Jen for IBA News.
We at IBA News mourn the passing of legendary diplomat and advisor to 6 prime ministers, Yehuda Avner, at age 86. Born in Manchester, England, he authored the best-selling book, The Prime Ministers. He is being laid to rest at this hour in Jerusalem. Avner moved to Israel in 1947, fought in the War of Independence, and he was involved in all of the major chapters of Israeli history. Avner was a frequent guest on IBA News. In this interview with IBA's Eli Wogelanter, Avner is asked about his personal legacy and the greatest accomplishment of Israel.
I think that the notion of kibbutz galiot, the ingathering of the exiles, is a historic phenomenon without precedent of almost biblical proportions. When I came, there were 600,000 Jews in the country, and then we were 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million. And you don't muck around with 6 million Jews anymore.
And what would you like your legacy to be, people in the future looking back? Your accomplishments as you worked with these prime ministers, what are you proudest of having done?
Well, you're speaking to the proverbial fly on the wall when they're talking about personal accomplishments. It's their story more than it is mine.
And you tell it quite well.
And I think their personal, thank you, but I think their personal accomplishment is, to me, it's almost a miraculous dimension again, is that despite all these decades of threat and war and pressure and boycott and siege, we have retained and maintained not only our independence, but our democratic freedoms.
As more and more schoolrooms are being equipped with wireless internet, concerns are rising over potential electromagnetic radiation. Some parents are fighting to stop what they claim is their children's physical suffering from the network, all the way to the Supreme Court. Their attorney, Daphna Tachover, told IBA's Ari O'Sullivan that Wi-Fi is also having a detrimental effect on the public at large, including fertility levels among young couples.
Unlike what the public has been told, the effects of this technology has been proven with thousands of research papers that show that it harms every system and every organ in the body. And we already see the results in schools. In the case, we showed the court that in 6 schools that we examined, there's over 200 children who are already very sick. And when I'm saying sick, I mean children with headaches, nauseousness, concentration problems, children who are coming back from school every day, complaining, crying. They cannot go to school, they cannot follow up what's going on in school. Children are just collapsing.
Well, definitely, headaches and nausea can be caused by lots of different things. What makes you sure it's happening from Wi-Fi?
Well, when a child is using a cell phone, for example, and when you put them to the head, they feel strong pain in the head. That's what's caused the pain. It's not anything else but the cell phone. If a child is sitting near the computer, and immediately when he's sitting on the computer, immediately he feels headache, he feels pressure in the head. Some children have their eyes going swollen. A lot of children immediately get nauseous, so I don't think it can be anything else.
Well, what do you propose the alternatives are?
Wired internet. Very easy.
Why is it not happening?
Well, we have been using wired internet and wired networks for the past 50 years. There's no problem with these networks. The Ministry of Education has some kind of a vision that is wireless. We have smart classes, everything wireless. But the Ministry of Education is ignoring the health effects of this technology, and is ignoring the sick children. And we have to stop this from happening. And I want to emphasize that what's happening in classes is that while Wi-Fi is dangerous in any other circumstances, but while we use it at home, you have one router, maybe a few more from the neighbors. In one class, you have dozens of routers from all the classes. In addition, you have dozens of computers in the class. So you're creating actually an environment which is so dense with radiation, which is unprecedented in any other environment. So while they're telling us that we should use the precautionary principle, especially when it comes to children, in essence, they're doing exactly the opposite in schools.
Well, you petitioned to the Supreme Court. What is it expected to do? What do you want to happen?
to issue an order that banned the use of Wi-Fi in schools.
Well, what's the alternative in the future? Because the whole world, the whole country is becoming networked with wireless and Wi-Fi. What are you going to do in the future?
Well, I think this is a very difficult question, and I think what happens with this, I call it wireless tsunami, is that we have been going on and continuing and using it without giving any notice to what's really happening with its health effects. I cannot tell you what the future holds in that regard. I know that people are very sick. There's about 10% of people who already suffer from, at least 10% of people from what's called electrosensitivity, which is what I suffer from and the children are suffering from. You can look at what happened in fertility treatment. 30% of males in Israel, their sperm is not functioning. And 20 to 30% of couples are going through fertility treatments. This is something that we did not have 10 years ago, not even 5 years ago. And there's about 100 research papers showing that it destroys the sperm, that it destroys the DNA of the sperm for generations. So you have all these health effects that has been ignored. The public is being misrepresented the harms, whether it's by the cell phone companies, whether by the government, and clearly people who are so addicted to these technologies just don't want to hear. But the reality is very different, and the harms are proven, and they're all over us.
In local money matters, the shekel was up in foreign currency trading, while share prices were down in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Here are the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather forecast, and temperatures will rise tomorrow with a heat wave predicted for later in the week. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Erin Viner will be at this desk tomorrow. Please join her for more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a great evening, and shalom from Jerusalem.